CBS News. This is breaking news.
I'm Natalie Shepard in the Channel 4 studios with more on our breaking news outside of Orleans Parish Criminal Court. Just a short time ago, the man convicted of shooting and killing former Saints Will Smith and shooting his wife Raquel Smith was sentenced. He will serve 25 years for the manslaughter of Will Smith, 15 years for shooting Raquel, and those sentences will be served concurrently. Our Danny Monteverdi has been in court this week following this case and joins us live outside the courthouse now. And Danny, a very emotional day.
It was, Natalie. CARDELL Hayes, he was the first one to take the stand this morning, and essentially the second he got on the stand, he began to cry. At one point, they actually took him off the stand, brought him in the back in the judge's chambers. Just in the back to give him a few minutes to compose himself. He got back up on the stand and basically was just saying that he wishes that night had never happened back in April. So it was just about a year ago. It was April 9th, excuse me, the night this all happened. He said if he could go back and do this all over again, he would have handled it differently. He was saying if he could do it again and if it worked out where a gun was involved, he said he wishes he was the one who would have died instead, alluding to the fact that the Smith children are without their father now. Raquel Smith is without a husband. And he was pretty much just asking the court at that point to kind of give him a little bit of mercy. And that's pretty much what his mother echoed as well. She took the stand, and it was a very, very emotional statement from her, just completely sobbing and in tears and raising her voice just with emotion, pleading with the judge to put her in jail instead, saying that her son never meant to do this. She was apologizing to the Smith family, sorry for what happened, and at one point said, put me in jail, I'll take the punishment, let him out. He's got a son, let him live his life. So yeah, today a very, very emotional day in the courtroom, Natalie.
Danny, and it sounds like the judge may have shown a little bit of mercy. Hayes could have been sentenced, if I'm correct, up to 60 years in prison. Did you get a sense of how Smith's family is reacting to this 25-year sentence?
Well, we'll have to wait to see how the Smith family reacts. The DA's office, a spokesman for them, came out afterwards and said that they really weren't pleased with it. As you said at the top of this cut-in, it's going to be 25 years is what he's looking at right now for his sentence. There's 25 years for the killing of Will Smith and 15 years for the shooting of Raquel Smith. But again, those sentences, as you said, will run concurrent. So it's 25 years total for the two. They did give credit for time served, so that's about a year. So you're looking at about 24 years total. But considering that it could have been as many as 60 years, 6 decades, no, the DA's office at least said, no, they weren't too pleased with it. Now, we did hear from Ramon Vargas with the New Orleans Advocate. He spoke to a representative of the Smith family who said there may be a statement that they put out later tonight. So we'll keep an eye on that to see if we do get any reaction from the Smith family.
Well, and Danny, you have been in court for the last couple of days. It sounds like this particular situation in sentencing took longer than a typical sentencing would have, and why is that?
Well, what happened was on Tuesday, John Fuller filed a motion for a new trial. That was based on what he claimed was some new evidence. That turned out to be, legally, I guess it was considered a witness, but it was a guy named Michael Burnside. Now, he is a retired soldier and a retired high school physics teacher. He lives about a mile away from where the shooting happened, and he claimed that he heard 2 distinct gunshots that night. The argument from the defense has been always that it was CARDELL Hayes who was the lone gunman. Hayes has kind of tried to play up a story that there were 2 gunmen. He always said that he never shot Raquel Smith. He admitted to killing Will Smith, but he always alluded to there being a second gunman. So Michael Burnside was brought into court yesterday with his story that he heard 2 guns. Now, that was a unique situation, to say the least. He kind of started off saying he doesn't really follow calendars and he doesn't have a watch. So he ultimately couldn't say what night he heard, but he was assuming it was the same night because he said the next day he walked to the scene, what he thought was the next day he walked to the scene, saw the memorial for Smith and read newspaper articles at the library where he goes to use the internet and read the news. And he said in his mind and the way he tracks time, he said he was convinced that he heard 2 separate guns that night. So that was a good chunk of yesterday morning was this motion for a new trial, which, of course, Judge Camille Burris denied. And so that did put it back a little bit. Legally, there was supposed to be at least 24 hours before she can sentence a defendant at that point, and we got to about that point today, and here we are now with 25 years for Cardell Hayes behind bars.
Well, and Danny, are we expecting to hear from Cardell Hayes' attorney John Fuller at all today?
That's what we're hoping for. We're actually right here. We are at the side of the courthouse here at Tulane and Broad. This is where Mr. Fuller comes in and out most days. We have been told that he's in another hearing right now in another division, so we're waiting to hear from him. We did hear from Jay Daniels, his co-counsel, a few minutes ago. Not too much that he said. They were somewhat happy with that sentence, but they weren't too thrilled. Again, their argument being that he was pretty much defending himself, trying to save his own life. But yeah, we do hope at some point today to hear from John Fuller, but right now we're just waiting for that.
Well, and before I let you go, I know we were watching here in the studio your live shot out there, and we saw Kevin O'Neill kind of breeze by you. Not much of a comment from him, obviously.
No, nothing from him. We asked him if he had any comment, and just actually didn't even look at us. He just kind of kept on walking down Tulane Avenue and just went about his business. So no comment from him as well. And again, Kevin O'Neill, for those unfamiliar, he was Cardell Hayes' friend with him in the vehicle that night. And I'm also being told that we saw Big Frida there at the court as well. Was Frida there just for support, or? Yeah, Big Frida. I'm sorry, say again? Big Frida was there at the court, I'm assuming for supportive purposes, or did Frida have anything to say? Nothing we've heard so far, but yeah, Big Frida had been there. Big Frida's a relative of Cardell Hayes, was here throughout the full trial, and came back for the last 2 days for the sentencing as well. But so far, no comment from anyone on the Hayes side. All right, Danny. Well, thank you so much. And actually, I'm being told here we actually, Natalie, we'll stick with you. We've got. We have John Fuller coming out right now. Mr. Fuller, your comment on the sentencing today?
We're certainly going to respect the sentence that the judge handed down. My client accepted it, and he's preparing himself mentally to endure it.
For 25 years, is that too much in your mind? Just enough?
Well, ultimately, my job was to represent him. The prosecutor's job was to prosecute him. The jury's job was to hand down the verdict that they felt appropriate, and at the end of the day, it's the judge's job to sentence him.
But with the 25 years that he's been sentenced to, what's your reaction to that? Are you happy with it, or was it too much? You're kind of the argument is always that he was trying to defend his life and save his life.
Yeah, so obviously it could have been a lot worse. If he was convicted guilty as charged, he could have gotten a life sentence and died in jail. If he was sentenced to 60 years, he probably could have died in jail, and at least with 25, he has an opportunity to be reunited with his family. Is 25 not as high as 60? Yeah, but that's still a significant amount of time that he would have to do.
Yeah, with you had a motion for a retrial yesterday that the judge denied that. Can you talk a little bit about the thought process with that?
Yeah, so legally, we all have duties as lawyers to zealously represent our clients and to take advantage, for lack of a better term, of every process available to every defendant. And whenever any lawyer loses a trial, I would hope that lawyer files a motion for a new trial, if for nothing else than to preserve the record for appeal if that particular defendant does take up an appeal. So it's more of a legal type of deal that I recommend every lawyer does whenever a guilty verdict is returned.
John, did you get to talk to Cardell after the sentencing? What was his sentiment? How did he feel? What did he have to say?
Well, as you had opportunity to see, Cardell is a good person, is a humble person, and he loves his family. So post-sentence, the majority of his attention was directed towards his mother, his son, and his sister, and some of his friends that were there. the only conversation that we had, basically I told him I loved him and I'd be talking to him soon, and that I was going to go outside and wait for his family in the hall.
Was he happy with the 25?
I didn't ask him, but I'm pretty sure the answer to that is no.
What's next? Do y'all plan to appeal anymore?
So you know that the state at this point is electing to go forward with the count that was severed. It's an aggravated assault count. So he has a trial date in late June for that, and he has an appeal attorney that is working or will work on his appeal.
Do you plan on keep representing Mr. Hayes?
I'm not going anywhere, so certainly I will be a part of all future legal proceedings, and I certainly will be here for the trial in June.
Now that everything is over, what would you like to say about, I guess, summarizing everything that's happened? Even talk about the DA's office and their handling of this case? And
You know, there was a debate, for lack of a better term, of whether I would do the sentencing argument or whether Jay would do it. And though he said pretty much the same thing, I said there was one thing that I wrote that I want to emphasize, and that this whole ordeal is so different than 99% of the homicides that occur. You have a deceased victim who, by all accounts, was a popular player. You had two girls that testified for the state yesterday who really touched me because they talked about how much they loved the fact that he coached them. And you also have a defendant in this case who's very different than the average defendant that you see in this building. He had not one but two businesses that he owned. He was a capable father who took care of his son, looked out for his son. He played 4 instruments in his church. He was an active church member, and by all accounts, a good person. And what's terrible is, and I was thinking about this earlier, if Will and Cardell, let's say they sat down next to each other at a basketball game, the sad thing in hindsight is that they probably would have hit it off because they have in common that, you know, they both played football and they both played on the defensive line. And on that night in April of last year, an unfortunate set of circumstances led to us being where we are. We have two great families that are grieving. So that's my impression of the event as a whole. In terms of the district attorney's office, they have a job to do, right? So to a certain extent, you have to respect and expect them to do their job, just as defense attorneys have a job, judges, juries have a job.
Mr. Fuller, do you think that the judge, like the jury that convicted your client, at the end of the day found that there was possibly culpability on both parties the night of the shooting, and that's why you got a 25-year sentence instead of a 60-year sentence, which is what the prosecution was asking for?
Obviously, none of us had any idea of the sentence that Judge Burris was going to hand down, and none of us had any conversation with her about that. I think that Judge Burris took everything into account. The loss to the Smith family, as she said, the loss of income, the loss of a father. And I think she also took into account Cardell's background. And I'm speculating, but I think she probably also prayed on this, and that was the decision that she arrived at. And, you know, we're going to accept that, and we're going to live with it.
Are you going to appeal?
An appeal will be filed. In terms of the lawyer's name that would be on appeal, no. In terms of contributions and advice, yes.
How long do you have to appeal this case?
We have to file something within 30 days, but there are a number of extensions that can occur. In all actuality, a few months.
John, what did Cardell express to you about the sentence?
Believe it or not, and somebody else asked me this earlier, believe it or not, we did not talk about the sentence at all, Cardell and I, in terms of the number that was handed down by the judge. Our conversation post-sentence had to deal with me expressing my love for him and my respect for him, and basically telling him that I was about to leave and I was going to go outside and meet his family when they were finished speaking with him.
Do you feel like you could have, in any way, do you have any regrets, or do you feel like you could have done anything different?
So every trial, no matter the outcome, obviously you take a minute and you reflect on what happened. When you get a not guilty, you still reflect on what happened. If it doesn't turn out exactly like you still reflect on what happened. But at the end of the day, I am proud of the job that my team put forth. I'm proud of the job that Jay Daniels did. I'm proud of the investigations that occurred. And, you know, both sides put in a lot of effort. You know, I don't want to take anything away from the prosecutors. I think they put a lot of hard work into this, and so did we. So at the end of the day, if the question is whether we stand on the work we did for Mr. Hayes, then the answer is 100% so.
What's the reaction of his family? I was highly emotional today with his mom on the stand and his sister. What was their reaction after they learned the sentence?
Well, they're hurt, you know, because they love him. You know, if you have siblings, then you know how tight that bond can be. And then obviously we know how tight the mother-son bond can be. So they're hurt, but they're not broken. And, you know, he has a strong mom. He comes from a strong tree. He has a strong support system. You know, so they were hurt, but they're definitely forging ahead.
The state was saying a lot throughout the proceedings, both in the trial and the sentencing hearings the past 2 days. He never seemed remorseful.
And you have been listening to John Fuller, the attorney for Cardell Hayes, the man convicted of shooting and killing former Saints player Will Smith. Cardell Hayes was sentenced just this afternoon to 25 years for Smith's manslaughter and also to 15 years for the attempted manslaughter, shooting his wife Raquel. Those sentences will be served concurrently for a total of 25 years. Fuller said, quote, of the sentence, it could have been worse. He says 25 years does give Cardell Hayes a chance to eventually be reunited with his family. It was a very emotional day in court today. We have not yet heard from the district attorney's office, from District Attorney Leon Cannizzaro, but we are hoping to at least hear from them or get a statement at some point. And we will have much more on the sentencing of Cardell Hayes coming up in just 25 minutes at 5 o'clock. We'll see you then.